Ethan Cole had never been anyone special. He was just an engineer working on a small research station on the edge of human space. He wasn't tall. He didn't have a powerful family name. And his skills, though impressive, were nothing that would get him noticed in the vast, cold expanse of the galaxy. He was content with his life, working with machines, and living in the quiet, orderly world of the station. But everything changed one afternoon, when a loud booming sound echoed through the station, followed by a rush of energy that almost knocked him off his feet. Ethan stumbled toward the observation deck, wondering what was going on. His heart raced as he saw it. A massive ship, far larger than any human-made vessel, was descending toward the station. It had a sleek, elegant design, unlike anything he had ever seen before. It was a Seraphim ship, the very same species known for their ancient and advanced technology, the rulers of the stars. And it was heading straight toward him. Before he could understand what was happening, the door to the observation deck slid open, and a group of Seraphim soldiers marched in. Their tall, slender figures were dressed in shimmering armor that seemed to reflect light in 1,000 ways, and their eyes were hidden behind dark helmets. They looked down at him as though he were nothing more than an insect. "Ethan Cole," one of them said, in a voice that was smooth but cold. The soldier's helmet reflected the dim light of the room. "You are to come with us immediately." Ethan felt his heart skip a beat. He had no idea what was going on. Why would the Seraphim want him? He was no politician, no soldier, just a simple engineer. But there was no time to question. The soldiers grabbed him, and within minutes he was aboard the enormous Seraphim ship. Inside, the ship was unlike anything Ethan had ever imagined. The walls were lined with glowing patterns, and the air was thick with a strange, soothing energy. Everything looked so perfect, so far beyond what humans had ever been able to achieve. He could only stare in awe as they led him through the grand hallways, eventually reaching a large chamber at the heart of the ship. Inside the chamber stood a woman. She was unlike any human woman Ethan had ever seen. Her long silver hair cascaded down her back, and her eyes, golden, glowing faintly, were fixed on him with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. She was tall, elegant, and regal, with an aura of authority that made the soldiers around her seem like mere servants. This was Princess Solara, heir to the Seraphim throne. Ethan felt a wave of confusion hit him as she stepped forward. What was she doing here? Why had they brought him to her? Without saying a word, Solara motioned for the soldiers to leave. The doors closed behind them, leaving Ethan alone with the princess. "Ethan Cole," she said, her voice soft but commanding. "I have chosen you." The words hit him like a punch. He took a step back, his mind racing. "Chosen me? What do you mean?" Solara smiled, though it was a cold smile, full of mystery. "You are the one I have chosen to be my companion, the one who will stand by my side, to help guide the future of the Seraphim." Ethan blinked in disbelief. "But I'm just an engineer. I don't understand. Why me?" The princess stepped closer, her golden eyes never leaving his face. "You do not understand yet, but you will. There is something about you, something within you that calls to me. It is unlike anything I have ever seen before." Ethan could barely comprehend what she was saying. His mind was racing. How could this be happening? What was she talking about? He was just a normal man from Earth. He wasn't important. He wasn't a leader. He didn't have special powers. "You don't have to worry," Solara continued, her tone almost gentle now. "You will learn soon enough. It is not just because of your skills or your lineage that I chose you. There is something else, something much deeper." Ethan's mind was spinning, but before he could respond, the door to the chamber opened, and another Seraphim entered. This one was an older man, his armor dark and decorated with symbols Ethan didn't recognize. He had a look of disapproval on his face as he gazed at Ethan. "Princess," the man said, bowing slightly, "are you certain about this? Choosing the human as your companion, it will cause unrest among the council." Solara didn't even glance at the man. I am certain, Ambassador, the decision has been made. The ambassador's eyes narrowed, but he didn't argue further. He turned and left, leaving Ethan and Silara alone once again. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Ethan's heart was still racing, and his head was filled with 1,000 questions. He tried to make sense of it all. Why had she chosen him? Why a human? And why now? What did she see in him? Finally, Silara spoke again. You will have time to think about this. But know this, Ethan Cole, your life is about to change forever. And when it does, you will understand why you were chosen. Ethan looked at her, still unsure of everything. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't special. But somehow, in that moment, he couldn't help but feel that his life was about to take a turn he could never have predicted. Ethan had never felt so out of place. The massive Seraphim ship felt like a strange dream. And now, after the princess had chosen him, everything had become even more bewildering. The halls were made of shimmering materials that seemed to glow with an inner light, and the air smelled clean and metallic. Ethan couldn't stop looking at everything around him. This was the heart of an ancient empire, one that stretched across the galaxy. He had been given quarters in the royal section of the ship, though it felt more like a prison than a guest room. There was no lock on the door, but the guards outside made it clear that leaving was not an option. He had no idea what was going to happen next. As he sat on the edge of the bed, Ethan's mind raced. How had this happened? Why had Silara chosen him, of all people? There had to be some mistake. The princess of an entire empire, an empire that ruled the stars, had picked a simple human engineer from Earth. He was nobody. He had no power, no influence, no skills that could compare to the elite of the Seraphim. So why him? The door opened with a soft whoosh, and Ethan stood up, ready for whatever was to come. He didn't know if it was the princess or someone else, but he wasn't going to sit idly by in confusion anymore. To his surprise, it wasn't Silara who entered the room. Instead, it was a tall Seraphim soldier with a dark expression. He had the look of someone who had seen too many battles and wasn't afraid to speak his mind. His armor was slightly different from the others, more worn, more battle-scared, and his eyes were sharp, with a coldness that seemed to pierce through Ethan. Ethan Cole, the soldier said, his voice deep and gravelly. Princess Silara wants to see you. Now. Without waiting for a response, the soldier turned and walked out of the room. Ethan hesitated for only a moment before following. His heart was still racing, but now he was beginning to feel the weight of what was happening. There was something larger at play here, and somehow he had become part of it. They walked through a series of hallways, past silent guards who didn't even glance at him. The whole ship seemed to be on edge, as though everyone was aware that something extraordinary was unfolding, something that had never happened before. When they reached the princess's private chamber, the soldier simply nodded and walked away, leaving Ethan standing outside the door. With a deep breath, Ethan stepped inside. Silara was seated at a large table, her golden eyes glowing softly in the dim light of the room. There was a calmness about her, as though she had already accepted her decision and was simply waiting for everyone else to do the same. When she saw Ethan, she smiled, though it was a distant, calculating smile. Ethan, come in, she said, gesturing to a chair across from her. Ethan sat down slowly, unsure of what to expect. Why am I here? What is going on? Silara studied him for a moment before answering. You are here because you are the one I have chosen. There is no mistake. I saw something in you that no one else has seen. You are special, Ethan, and I believe you will understand soon enough. I don't understand, Ethan replied, frustration creeping into his voice. I'm just a regular guy, a mechanic. I have no place here, no purpose in your world. You are wrong, Silara said softly. You may not see it, but you are part of something much greater. Your kind, humans, have something unique, something I need, something that could change everything. Ethan's mind raced again. What are you talking about? What do you need from me? The princess's gaze was intense. Your people have abilities that the seraphim do not possess, abilities that were lost to us long ago. You are the key to unlocking those abilities, and I believe you are the one who can help me bring them back. Ethan felt his throat tighten. Abilities? What abilities? I'm just a mechanic. I don't have any special powers. You will soon, she replied. But first, there are things you need to know. Before Ethan could ask more, the door to the chamber opened again. This time, it was the ambassador, the one who had disapproved of Ethan's presence before. He stepped inside, his face dark and filled with anger. Princess, the ambassador said, his tone sharp, this is madness. The council will never accept this. A human chosen to stand by your side. It will create chaos, unrest. The seraphim will never tolerate this. Silara didn't flinch. I do not care what the council thinks. This is my decision. The ambassador's eyes narrowed. You are making a mistake. There are those who will not sit idly by while you bring a human into the heart of our empire. Ethan could feel the tension in the room rise. It was clear that not everyone agreed with Silara's choice. In fact, it seemed as though there were factions within the seraphim who would stop at nothing to prevent this alliance. They saw it as a threat to their power, a threat to the established order. I don't care about the council, Silara said again, her voice firm. This is bigger than politics. It is bigger than all of us. The ambassador hesitated before bowing slightly and turning to leave. You may regret this, princess, he said, his voice filled with venom. But when the time comes, remember that the council warned you. As the door shut behind him, Silara turned back to Ethan, her gaze softer. There are many who will try to stop us, Ethan. But I believe in you. I believe you are the one who can help me unlock the power that lies within. Ethan sat back in his chair, still trying to absorb everything. He didn't know what he was getting into. But one thing was clear. His life would never be the same again. And whether he was ready or not, he was about to become part of something much larger than himself. The days that followed were a whirlwind of confusion for Ethan. The seraphim ship, which had once seemed so impressive, now felt like a prison. Every corner of the ship was filled with strange symbols and advanced technology that he couldn't begin to understand. There were no windows, only smooth metallic walls that seemed to close in on him. The guards outside his room were silent, their eyes never meeting his, and he had learned quickly that wandering the ship without permission was not an option. The princess, Silara, came to see him often, though their conversations never seemed to bring Ethan any closer to understanding what was happening. She would speak of power, of abilities, and of ancient secrets, but none of it made sense. One afternoon, after another long meeting where Silara spoke in riddles about the future, Ethan had reached his limit. He couldn't sit back and let her pull him into whatever plans she had without knowing more. He had to know the truth. That evening, when the princess visited his quarters again, Ethan was determined to get some answers. He stood as she entered, her silver hair shimmering in the soft lights of the room. The calmness in her eyes made him feel small, yet there was something in her gaze that still pulled him in. He couldn't deny the connection he felt to her, but he wasn't sure if it was because of her power or because of something else, something deeper. Silara, he began, his voice firm. I need you to explain it all to me. I don't understand any of this. You've told me I'm the key, but what does that mean? What do you really want from me? Silara's expression softened, but she didn't answer immediately. She moved toward the table, her movements graceful and deliberate. Then, after a long pause, she looked back at him, her golden eyes filled with a strange sadness. I've been waiting for someone like you for a long time, Ethan, she said quietly. Your people, humans, possess something unique, something that we seraphim lost long ago. Ethan was taken aback by her words. Something we lost. What do you mean? What do humans have that you don't? Silara glanced away, her gaze distant as though recalling an ancient memory. A long time ago, Humans and seraphim were the same. We were one species, sharing the same origin, the same potential. But over time, the seraphim evolved in one direction, and humans evolved in another. We grew distant from each other, and the power we once shared was lost to us. Ethan could hardly believe what he was hearing. Wait a minute, are you saying that humans and seraphim are the same species? That we come from the same place? Silara nodded slowly. Yes, our ancestors were the same, but when the seraphim first reached the stars, we developed abilities that allowed us to control energy, manipulate matter, and evolve further than any species could imagine. But somewhere along the way, we lost something important. We began to lose the very thing that had once made us special. Ethan's mind raced, trying to process what she was saying. So, humans and seraphim were once the same, and you're saying that you've lost some kind of power. And now you think I have it? Silara's eyes shone with a strange light. Yes. You see, humans are different. You adapt in ways that we cannot. You learn, you evolve, and you survive. Your strength lies not in the abilities you have now, but in the potential you carry inside you. I believe that you, Ethan Cole, are the key to unlocking that power. The power that we lost long ago. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. So you think I have some kind of hidden power, and you want me to help you get it back? Not just help me, Silara replied, her voice growing more serious. I need you, Ethan. You are the one who can restore the balance. If you succeed, you will change everything. Everything for both the seraphim and humanity. Ethan stared at her, still unsure of what to believe. Was this all some kind of game to her, or was she truly telling the truth? He didn't feel powerful. He didn't feel like he had any special abilities. He was still just a mechanic from Earth. But the more Silara spoke, the more Ethan started to believe that there was something more to all of this. He felt a strange stirring within himself, like something was just out of reach, something he had always known but never truly understood. I don't know if I can do what you're asking, Ethan said, his voice quieter now. I'm not a hero. I'm not special. Silara took a step closer to him, her gaze never leaving his face. You don't have to be a hero, Ethan. You just have to be willing to trust yourself. The power is within you. It has always been there. You just need to open your mind, to let go of your doubts. Ethan was silent for a long time, trying to absorb her words. Could he really have some kind of hidden power? Was there something inside him that he had never tapped into? He didn't know what to think anymore. But one thing was clear. Silara believed in him. She believed that he could help her unlock the very power that had been lost to the seraphim. And somehow, despite all his doubts, Ethan couldn't help but feel that he was meant to be here, meant to be part of something much bigger than himself. You really think I can do this? He asked, looking at Silara. She smiled, though it was a smile that seemed both sad and hopeful. I do. I've waited for a long time for this moment, Ethan. And I believe you are the one who can help us both. Ethan nodded slowly, still unsure but feeling the weight of her words. For the first time since he had arrived on the Seraphim ship, he felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, he wasn't as ordinary as he had always thought. Ethan's mind was still spinning after his conversation with Silara. She had told him that he was the key, that humans possessed some hidden potential that the Seraphim had lost long ago. But the more he thought about it, the more confusing it all seemed. How could he, a simple engineer from Earth, have something so important inside of him? Still, there was no denying that something was changing inside him. He could feel it, a strange energy, like a spark that had been ignited within him, waiting to burn brighter. He couldn't explain it, but it was there. For the next few days, Silara worked closely with him, teaching him about Seraphim history and the ancient powers they had once shared with humans. As they trained, Ethan began to notice subtle changes in his body and mind. His senses sharpened, his thoughts became clearer, and he felt a growing connection to the energy that seemed to flow through the ship. It was as if he was slowly awakening to something greater. But all the while, there was a nagging feeling in the back of his mind, a feeling that something wasn't right. Silara was kind, but there were moments when her eyes would flash with an intensity that made Ethan wonder just how much she was hiding from him. One night, as Ethan sat alone in his quarters, lost in thought, the ship's alarm suddenly blared. The harsh sound echoed through the walls, and the lights flickered, turning red. Panic surged through Ethan's chest as he rushed to the door. But before he could open it, the door slid open on its own. Silara stood there, her face pale and intense. "We need to leave," she said urgently, her voice low. "Now." Ethan didn't hesitate. He followed her down the long, narrow hallways of the ship as the alarms continued to wail. Something was wrong. The ship was under attack. They reached a small hidden chamber at the back of the ship where a small shuttle waited, its engines already humming. "What's happening?" Ethan asked, trying to catch his breath. "Betrayal," Silara replied, her eyes hardening. "The Council has turned against us. They know what I'm trying to do. They don't want humans to become a threat. They think I've lost my mind." Ethan's heart raced as he realized what she was saying. The Seraphim Council, the powerful rulers who had been silently watching them, had decided that Silara's decision to work with humans was too dangerous. They feared the power that humans might hold, the very power that Silara believed was hidden within him. "Where are we going?" Ethan asked, his mind reeling. Silara didn't answer immediately, her gaze fixed on the shuttle ahead. "We're leaving Seraphim space. We need to go to the edges of the galaxy. It's the only place we can be safe." Before they could board, the ship shook violently, and a loud explosion rocked the hallway. The lights flickered again, and a loud crash echoed through the ship. "They've breached the outer hull," Silara shouted. "We have to move now." They ran into the shuttle, and the doors slammed shut behind them. Silara quickly activated the controls, and the ship shot into the sky, leaving the Seraphim ship behind in a trail of smoke and sparks. As they accelerated into space, Ethan could see flashes of enemy ships in the distance. The Seraphim fleet was hunting them down. Ethan's thoughts were racing. He had just learned that he might have the power to change everything. But now, with the Seraphim Council turning against them, he wasn't sure what to believe. Was he really the key? Or was he just a pawn in Silara's game? "We're going to be okay," Silara said, her voice calm, but there was a flicker of fear in her eyes. "I promise. But we need to get to the hidden base. It's the only place where we'll be safe." The shuttle jumped through space, heading toward the outer rim of Seraphim-controlled space. The stars seemed to blur past them as the ship hurtled through the void. Ethan sat in silence, his hands gripping the armrest of his seat. His thoughts were a whirlpool of confusion, fear, and doubt. But then, as they approached the edge of the galaxy, Silara turned to him. "Ethan," she said, her voice soft but firm, "I need you to trust me. You are not just a part of this because of some strange power inside you. You are a part of this because you have the potential to lead. I believe in you, and you need to believe in yourself." Ethan looked at her, feeling a sense of warmth from her words. He wasn't sure if he was ready to become some great leader, but he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't turn back now. There was no going back to his old life. He was already part of something much larger than he had ever imagined. As they approached the hidden base, Silara's words echoed in his mind. "You have the potential to lead." Could it be true? Was he really capable of something more? Or was he simply caught up in a moment of destiny that he didn't fully understand? The shuttle finally reached the hidden base, a secret world tucked away in the farthest corner of the galaxy. It was a place where Silara and others who believed in her mission could regroup, plan, and wait for the next move. As the shuttle landed, Silara turned to Ethan one last time. "We're not safe yet," she said quietly, "but here we can prepare. And together, we can change the fate of both our worlds." Ethan nodded, a new sense of determination rising within him. He didn't know what was coming next, but one thing was certain. He wasn't going to let fear control him. He was going to face whatever came next, and for the first time, he felt a sense of purpose. Together, they would fight. And together, they would change the galaxy. The hidden base was unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. Nestled deep in an asteroid belt, it was a fortress carved into the very rock, a place of refuge for those who resisted the Seraphim Council's oppressive rule. As the shuttle landed, the dull hum of the engines ceased, and the doors slid open with a soft hiss. Ethan stepped out, feeling the cool, dry air of the hidden base wash over him. The base was silent, but there was a strange sense of anticipation in the air. Silara was already moving ahead, her graceful steps barely making a sound on the metallic floor. "Stay close," she said, her voice low but urgent. "There are many here who will be wary of you. Some of them will question why I brought you here." Ethan nodded, his nerves on edge. He had no idea what to expect. Was he really ready for this? For whatever came next? As they walked deeper into the base, Ethan couldn't help but notice the murals on the walls. They depicted scenes of ancient battles, seraphim and humans fighting side by side, a united force. But as they moved forward, the murals began to show a darker side. Humans separated from the seraphim, fighting against their former allies. It seemed that the story Silara had told him was only part of the truth. There were secrets buried deep in seraphim history, and Ethan felt as though he was beginning to uncover them. They reached a large hall at the center of the base, where a small group of individuals stood waiting. Some were seraphim, others were human, but they all looked at Ethan with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. He couldn't blame them. He had no idea what he was doing here, either. Silara stopped in front of them and turned to face Ethan. "This is the Council of the Resistance," she said, her voice firm but calm. "They will decide if you are worthy of being a part of this movement." Ethan's stomach tightened. He hadn't come here to be judged, but he knew there was no other choice. If he wanted to survive, if he wanted to understand the strange powers inside him, he had to face whatever was ahead. One of the seraphim stepped forward, a tall figure with silver armor that gleamed in the dim light. His eyes were sharp and his voice cold. "So this is the human you've chosen, Princess Silara," he said, his gaze flicking to Ethan. "A mechanic. What can he possibly offer that we don't already have?" Silara's eyes hardened, but she didn't flinch. "He is not just any human. He is the one who will help us restore what we've lost, the power we once shared with humanity, the potential to reshape the galaxy." The seraphim's expression darkened, but he didn't speak. Another figure, a human woman with short brown hair and a scar running down her cheek, stepped forward. "And how do you know this?" she asked, her voice skeptical. "How do you know this human is the one we've been waiting for?" Silara looked at Ethan, her gaze softening for a moment. "I believe in him. I've seen what's inside him, and I know he is the key to unlocking the power we need." The room fell silent. The members of the resistance exchanged uncertain glances, and Ethan felt the weight of their judgment pressing down on him. He wasn't ready for this. He wasn't even sure what they were asking of him. Finally, the seraphim leader spoke again. "We cannot afford to risk everything on a human who may not even understand his own power. If he is truly the key, he must prove it." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. "How do I prove it?" he asked, his voice shaky. The seraphim leader looked at Silara. "You will help him awaken whatever abilities he has. Only then will we know if he's truly capable of what you claim." Ethan didn't know how he was supposed to prove anything. He didn't feel any different. He still felt like a regular guy, someone who had been swept into a world that didn't make sense. But there was something in Silara's eyes, something that told him she believed in him, even when he couldn't believe in himself. "Take him to the chamber," the seraphim leader ordered. "We will see if he is truly the one." Silara nodded, and without a word, she led Ethan to a smaller room at the far side of the base. The chamber was cold, the walls lined with strange, glowing symbols. In the center of the room was a pedestal, and above it, a soft light flickered as if waiting for them. "What is this place?" Ethan asked, his voice echoing in the empty chamber. "This is where we can awaken your potential," Sci-Fi said softly. "It's a place of power, a place where you can tap into what's inside you." Ethan swallowed, his heart pounding in his chest. "I don't know what you're asking of me." "You don't need to understand it all right now," Sci-Fi said, her voice gentle. "Just trust me, Ethan. Trust yourself." Ethan took a deep breath and stepped toward the pedestal, his mind racing. What if he failed? What if he couldn't unlock whatever power was inside him? But as he reached out to touch the pedestal, something inside him stirred. A rush of warmth flooded through his body, and his hands began to glow with a soft light. The symbols on the walls began to shift, reacting to the energy flowing from him. It was as if the room itself was alive, responding to his presence. He felt it, power, not in the way he had expected, but deep within him. The energy seemed to be awakening, pulling from someplace deep inside him, a place he didn't even know existed. It was overwhelming, but at the same time, it felt right. Silara watched him closely, her eyes wide with awe. "You're doing it, Ethan. You're awakening the power." For the first time since arriving in the Seraphim ship, Ethan felt like he truly understood. He wasn't just a mechanic from Earth. He was part of something much larger, something ancient and powerful. And as the light around him grew brighter, Ethan knew that this was only the beginning. Ethan stood in the center of the chamber, his hands still glowing with an ethereal light. The warmth that had surged through him moments ago was fading, leaving behind a strange emptiness. It wasn't gone entirely. The energy still hummed beneath his skin, like a heartbeat he couldn't quite control. Silara watched him with a mix of awe and expectation. "You've done it," she said, her voice filled with quiet wonder. "You've awakened the power within you." But Ethan didn't feel like he had. He still felt like the same person he had been before, the same mechanic from Earth who had stumbled into this galactic conflict by accident. He wasn't sure what was happening inside him, but he couldn't deny that something was different. "I don't feel any different," Ethan muttered, glancing at his glowing hands. "I don't know what you expected, but I still don't understand what this power is." "You will," Silara replied, stepping closer to him. "The awakening takes time, but you're already showing signs of something incredible. Your body is adjusting to the energy, and as you grow stronger, so will your abilities." Ethan wanted to believe her, but the doubt still lingered. Was he really the key to something grand, or was he just part of some larger plan he didn't fully understand? He needed answers, not just from Silara, but from himself. Before he could speak again, the door to the chamber suddenly slid open, and a voice called from the hallway. "Silara, we need to talk." Ethan turned to see the Seraphim leader from the council, the same one who had questioned him earlier. His eyes were cold and calculating, as if he was sizing Ethan up with every step. "Come," the leader commanded. "We've detected a threat. We need your help, Ethan." Silara tensed at his words, but she nodded. "I'll come with you," she said, her tone firm. She turned to Ethan. "Stay close. There's much more going on than I told you." Ethan followed them as they walked down a narrow corridor. The walls of the base hummed softly, as if alive with energy, but the atmosphere was tense. The sounds of distant voices and hurried footsteps filled the air, and Ethan could sense the urgency in their movements. Something was wrong. They reached a large control room, where several members of the resistance were gathered around a series of glowing monitors. The air was thick with worry, and Ethan felt his heart race as he realized this wasn't just about the power inside him anymore. There was something much bigger at play. "What's going on?" Silara demanded, walking up to the main console. One of the technicians turned to her, their face grim. "We've detected an incoming fleet. It's too close for comfort. The Seraphim Council has sent reinforcements. They know we're here." Ethan's pulse quickened. "What does that mean? Are we under attack?" We're being hunted, the technician replied. They've already locked onto our position. They'll be here within the hour. Silara clenched her fists, her eyes narrowing. It won't catch us off guard. We need to prepare. Ethan felt a cold wave of fear wash over him. He had only just learned the truth about the Seraphim and their past with humans, and now he was already caught in the middle of a war. The fate of the galaxy seemed to be on his shoulders, and the weight was almost too much to bear. What can I do? Ethan asked, his voice shaky. I'm still figuring this out. I don't even know how to control whatever this is. Silara turned to him, her expression softening. You don't have to control it just yet, but we need to move quickly. We're going to need all the power we can get. The technician turned back to the console, tapping a few commands. We've managed to scramble their sensors for now, but it won't hold long. We need to get out of here. Ethan didn't know what to do, but he couldn't just stand there. He had to do something. He glanced at Silara, then back at the screen where the enemy fleet was approaching. There was no time to waste. We're not just going to sit here and wait for them to arrive, are we? He asked, his voice growing more confident despite the fear clawing at him. Silara gave him a small smile. I'm glad to see you're ready to fight. She turned to the others in the room. Get the evacuation ready. We're leaving the base. One of the resistance members stepped forward, holding a small device. We've prepared a safe route for you, the person said, their voice steady. It's a narrow passage through the asteroid belt. We can use it to avoid detection. But it won't be easy. We'll do whatever it takes, Silara said, her voice fierce. She turned back to Ethan. Are you ready? Ethan wasn't sure if he was ready. He didn't know what this battle would bring, or if his newfound abilities were enough to help them escape. But he knew one thing. He couldn't back down now. The people around him were counting on him, and he had to do whatever he could to help. I'm ready, he said, his voice steady. Silara nodded, then turned to the technician. Prepare the shuttle. We need to move now. As they hurried toward the hangar, Ethan's mind raced. What if they didn't make it out? What if the Seraphim fleet was too powerful? But Silara's words echoed in his mind. You are the key. Maybe he didn't fully understand his power yet, but he had to believe that it was enough. He had to trust in himself. The resistance fighters scrambled to prepare for the escape, gathering weapons and equipment. Silara was focused, moving with a sense of purpose that seemed to calm the others around her. Ethan followed her, doing his best to keep up, his thoughts consumed by the danger they were facing. Finally, they'd reached the shuttle, a sleek vessel that stood ready for departure. As the door closed behind them and the engines roared to life, Ethan took a deep breath. They were leaving the base, but the fight was far from over. The Seraphim fleet was closing in, and Ethan knew that their journey had only just begun. The shuttle engines hummed steadily, cutting through the silence of space. Ethan sat in one of the seats, his eyes fixed on the view screen ahead. Outside, the stars stretched infinitely, but his mind was far from the beauty of the galaxy. His thoughts were consumed by what lay ahead. They had narrowly escaped the Seraphim fleet's detection, but that didn't mean they were safe. In fact, it felt like the real danger was only just beginning. The faces of those who had stayed behind in the base flashed through his mind. Were they okay? Had the Seraphim caught up with them? He felt a deep sense of guilt for leaving, but Silara's words kept echoing in his head. We need you, Ethan. You are the key. But what did that even mean? He had no idea how to unlock his powers. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a man who was being pulled into a war he didn't fully understand, with abilities he hadn't even begun to control. Silara sat beside him, her face a mask of concentration as she navigated the shuttle. She had been calm and steady through it all, but Ethan could see the subtle tension in her shoulders. She was worried too. He could feel it. Where are we going? Ethan asked, breaking the silence. I know you said we needed to leave Seraphim space, but where do we go now? Silara glanced over at him, her eyes soft but determined. We're heading toward the Nebula Gateway. It's a safe haven for those who have opposed the Seraphim. It's far from the reach of their fleet, and it will give us time to regroup. Ethan nodded, but his thoughts were still unsettled. And after that? Silara hesitated, her fingers tightening on the controls. After that, we find a way to defeat the Council. We find a way to show the galaxy that humans are not to be underestimated. Ethan's heart raced. You really think we can do that? Defeat them? Silara's eyes hardened with resolve. I have to believe we can. We have no other choice. The shuttle sped through the vastness of space, moving further from the Seraphim stronghold with each passing second. The silence stretched on, broken only by the low hum of the engines and the occasional beeping of the navigation system. Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that the Seraphim would catch up to them at any moment. They couldn't outrun an entire fleet forever. They needed a plan. I still don't understand why the Seraphim are so afraid of humans, Ethan said, trying to make sense of everything. Why are we the threat? Silara sighed softly, her eyes distant as she spoke. The Seraphim believe that humanity's potential is something they can't control. Long ago, humans and Seraphim shared a bond, an energy, a power that could reshape worlds. But that power was lost when the Seraphim turned on humanity. They cut themselves off from us, and they've tried to erase all trace of that power. Ethan felt a cold shiver run down his spine. But if they erased it, how do I have it? Silara turned to him, her gaze softening. You're the proof that the power wasn't lost. It's still inside us. The Seraphim have forgotten their true history, and now they're afraid that humans will rediscover it. Ethan ran his hand through his hair, feeling overwhelmed. I don't even know where to begin. You don't have to do this alone, Silara said, her voice reassuring. I'll help you. We'll figure it out together. Ethan wasn't sure if he believed that. Could he really unlock the potential inside him? Could he really change the fate of both humans and Seraphim? It was a lot to ask of anyone, let alone someone like him, just a simple man from Earth. The shuttle's engine suddenly sputtered, pulling Ethan out of his thoughts. He glanced up, his heart skipping a beat. The warning lights flashed red. Something was wrong. Silara? He asked, his voice rising in concern. What's happening? Silara's face turned pale. We've been detected. The shuttle shook violently as the enemy fleet's ships appeared in the distance, their massive forms blotting out the stars. The Seraphim were closer than they had realized. Ethan could see the sharp outlines of their warships cutting through the black void, their weapons locked and ready. We can't outrun them, Silara said, her voice calm despite the growing danger. But we don't have to. What do you mean? Ethan asked, his heart racing. Activate the energy, Silara said urgently. You need to tap into the power inside you. It's the only way we'll survive. Ethan's eyes widened. Now, I don't know how to. You have to try, Silara insisted. You have no choice. We can't outrun them. But maybe, just maybe, you can stop them. Ethan's hands were trembling as he reached out, feeling the strange energy surge within him. It was still unfamiliar, still wild, but he could sense it now. The power was like a current beneath the surface, waiting for him to embrace it. He closed his eyes and focused, trying to quiet his mind, to let the energy flow through him. It wasn't easy. The power resisted him, and he fought against the rising panic. But then something shifted. He felt it, his connection to the energy deepening. The ship's systems hummed in response as the energy surged through the shuttle's controls. It was like he was becoming one with the ship, guiding it with his thoughts. The shuttle's engines roared to life, faster and stronger than before. The Seraphim fleet was closing in, but now they were the ones being outpaced. Ethan could feel their weapons locking onto him, but he wasn't afraid. Not anymore. He pushed the energy forward, directing it at the incoming ships. The force was powerful, a shockwave that rattled the enemy fleet. The warships faltered, their systems scrambling as Ethan's energy sent ripples of interference through their hulls. "We're losing them," Silara breathed, her voice filled with disbelief. Ethan didn't stop. He poured every ounce of focus he had into maintaining the energy field, sending the Seraphim fleet scattering in confusion. The distance between them grew, and with each passing second, the danger lessened. Finally, the Seraphim ships retreated, their weapons powering down. They had been defeated, at least for now. Silara turned to Ethan, her face alight with astonishment. "You did it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan sat back in his seat, breathing heavily. His hands were still glowing faintly, and his body felt drained, but for the first time since this journey began, he felt something else. Hope. Maybe he wasn't just a mechanic. Maybe he was the key to something much bigger. And maybe, just maybe, he could change the galaxy after all.